You're not supposed to look at me like that. Kalen's breath hitched. It wasn't just the words. It was a low, resonant thrum beneath them, vibrating through the rusted metal floor plating, straight into his bones. His gaze would have been fixed on the intricate, shifting patterns on her face, head. It was hard to tell where one began, and the other ended with her species. Snapped her eyes. They were large, multifaceted, like dark, polished gemstones, but they held an unnerving clarity. They were watching him, not the way the guards did, or the sparse few other prisoners he'd encountered, all fear and suspicion. Hers held something else. Curiosity, sharp and unapologetic. And the look she meant, he realized, wasn't just at her, but into her. Like what? He managed, his voice rough. It felt like years since he'd spoken actual words, not just grunts or the strained pleas that were always ignored. He was chained to the wall, his arms aching above his head, the cold biting through his threadbare jumpsuit. The room was less a cell and more a cage, narrow and deep, smelling of stale air, fear, and something else, something faintly metallic and sweet, like blood and nectar mixed. It was her smell. He was beginning to associate. She stepped closer, the movement fluid and silent. Her form was slender, draped in simple, dark cloth that shimmered even in the dim light. He still couldn't discern the details of her physique. Deliberately, he suspected. Her culture seemed to regard overt physical description as deeply invasive. But the impression was one of grace, of contained power. When she was close, the thrumming intensified, a subtle pressure in his skull. She was beautiful in a way that bypassed all his human definitions. The shifting patterns on her skin, or whatever was, weren't static. They flowed like ink under water, deep blues and violets swirling, punctuated by flashes of brighter, electric green when she was agitated. Right now, they were calm, deep hues. Like you see inside, she said, her voice a low melody, the strange thrumming part of it. Like you're trying to read the light. He frowned. Light? Was that what she called the patterns? He wasn't trying to read them, not consciously. He was just fascinated, transfixed. They were unlike anything he'd ever seen, more expressive than any human face, more complex than any human language. They seemed to mirror her mood, her thoughts, maybe even something deeper. I don't know what you mean, he said, trying to keep his tone neutral, non-threatening. She was a guard, or some kind of overseer. They didn't usually interact like this. Usually, they just prodded him with stun batons or tossed him nutrient paste. This was different. She didn't carry a weapon, didn't wear armor, just a shimmering cloth and that intense, unsettling gaze. She extended a hand slowly, deliberately, stopping just shy of touching him. Her fingers were long and tapered, ending in delicate, sharp tips. The patterns on her hand intensified, a rapid, frantic dance of green and gold. The light shows a song of the soul, she murmured, her voice softer now, almost questioning. It is visible to all who know how to look. But you are not of the song, yet you see. How? Kalen swallowed. He had no idea what she was talking about. The song? The light? He just saw pretty colors. Colors that felt meaningful, like they were trying to tell him something. He felt a sudden, sharp pang of loneliness. This alien, this creature so utterly removed from his reality, was speaking in metaphors he couldn't grasp, asking questions he couldn't answer. But in her eyes and the thrum of her voice, he felt a strange echo, a recognition. I don't know, he repeated, genuinely confused. He lowered his head slightly, looking at the floor. He didn't want to seem defiant, but he couldn't pretend to understand her alien mysticism. His chains rattled softly with the movement. She didn't back away. Instead, she shifted her weight, settling into a posture that was almost relaxed. They say your species is opaque, she continued, as if talking to herself. That your souls are hidden, muted, that the light does not flow through you. Yet I see you watching the dance of my thoughts, the rhythm of my emotions, the echo of my intent. Tell me, human, what do you see? His eyes lifted again, drawn by her voice, by the sheer strangeness of the conversation. He looked at her face again, focusing on the patterns. They were swirling now, a slow, mesmerizing eddy of blue and violet. He saw a curiosity, a deep, probing interest that went beyond simple observation. He saw a hint of something else, too, something that made his breath catch, a flicker of vulnerability, quickly masked by the flowing colors. I see. He hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't sound insane. I see you're wondering about me, about why I'm looking. A delicate, sharp-tipped finger lifted and touched her own cheek, tracing the flowing patterns there. The blues deepened, becoming almost indigo. More than wonder, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. I see an echo, a familiar frequency in an unfamiliar form. She paused, her gaze holding his. They call you the prisoner. The arena fodder. They say you are simple, brutal, a disposable thing. But the light I see around you, it is complex, stormy. It is a sky full of unwept rain. He flinched internally at the mention of the arena. He knew that was his eventual fate. He'd seen others taken, heard the roars, the screams. His captors, the Kthar, were known for their brutal blood sports. But her description of his light, a stormy sky, unwept rain, it resonated with a painful accuracy he hadn't expected. He felt like a storm trapped inside, unable to release the grief, the fear, the anger. It's just colors, he said weakly, trying to dismiss her words, to dismiss the unsettling intimacy of this exchange. She made a sound that might have been a soft laugh, a gentle chime accompanying the thrum. The patterns on her shifted rapidly, a ripple of bright green amusement. Colors are the language of the universe, human, the vibration of existence. You may call them colors, but you feel their meaning. Don't deny it. She leaned in slightly, her gaze intense. What is your designation, human? Kalen, he said, the name feeling strange and foreign on his tongue after so long. Kalen, she repeated, the name a soft sound in her language. The patterns around her eyes softened, the indigos deepening into something that felt warm. I am Lyral. Lyral. The name tasted like alien poetry. He held her gaze, the thrumming filling the small space between them. He didn't know who she was, why she was talking to him, or what any of this meant. But for the first time since he'd been captured, he didn't feel like just a body waiting for the slaughter. He felt seen, and that was terrifying, and impossibly exhilarating. The sound of heavy boots echoed down the corridor, growing closer. Lyral straightened instantly, her form becoming taut. The patterns on her shifted to sharp, angular reds and blacks, a sudden, stark contrast to the blues and violets. The gentle thrumming sharpened into a harsh, discordant beat. Her eyes narrowed, the multifaceted lenses focusing intently on the doorway. The transformation was instantaneous and absolute. The gentle, curious being of moments ago was gone, replaced by something dangerous and alert. I must go, she said, her voice flat, devoid of the musicality it held before. Do not speak of this to anyone. Before Kalen could respond, before he could even process the abrupt shift, she was gone. A flicker of shimmering cloth disappearing around the corner, just as a heavy Kthar guards clumped past the cell, their armor clanking, their guttural language echoing off the metal walls. They didn't spare him a glance. Their attention focused down the corridor. He was just a prisoner, the fodder, unseen, unheard. Except, he thought, by Lyral. The silence in his cell felt heavier now, filled with the ghost of her presence, the phantom echo of her thrumming voice, and the bewildering memory of the dancing colors on her skin. He looked at his chained hands, then up at the empty doorway, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. What was this? What had just happened? The air in the cell still held a faint trace of that strange, sweet metallic scent. Kalen closed his eyes, trying to recall the exact shade of blue in her light when she had said his name. Lyral. The name clung to him like a promise or a curse. He didn't know which yet. He was still chained, still a prisoner, still destined for the arena. But something had shifted. The world outside his misery had intruded in the most unexpected, beautiful, and terrifying way. He felt a strange, new kind of tension coiling in his gut, sharper than hunger or fear. It was a tension of the unknown, mixed with an unwilling, undeniable spark of connection. He was desperate to understand her world, to see the patterns again, to hear the thrumming voice. And that desperation was a dangerous thing in a place like this. The Kthar guards had disappeared down the corridor. Silence returned, heavier than before. Kalen was left alone with his thoughts. With the echo of Lyril's presence, he replayed the conversation in his mind, trying to decipher her cryptic words. The light, the song, the idea that he could see what others couldn't. Was it some kind of test? A cruel game? Or was there something genuinely extraordinary about her, about him, about this impossible connection forming in the heart of this brutal prison? The memory of her eyes, those dark, intelligent facets, lingered. They held a depth that belied the Kthar's simplistic view of her species, or perhaps his own simplistic view of them. He had seen their kind before, serving the Kthar in various capacities, usually silent and subservient. But Lyril was neither. There was an authority about her, a quiet intensity that felt ancient and powerful. He tried to focus on the practicalities. She had warned him not to speak of this. To whom? He had no one to speak to. The other prisoners were just as broken and terrified as he was. Or worse. They barely acknowledged each other's existence, lost in their own private hells. The Kthar guards were brutes, interested only in control and degradation. Who would he tell? And why did she care? Was she risking something by talking to him? The vivid memory of the sudden, stark shift in her light when the guard's approach returned. The angular reds and blacks. The discordant thrum. That was fear or warning, or both. He felt a new kind of danger now, one that didn't involve physical pain or imminent death. It involved exposure. Exposure to the strange, fragile interaction to the harsh reality of his captivity. If the Kthar found out, what would happen? To him? To her? He knew better than to ask such questions in a place like this. Survival meant staying invisible, keeping your head down, accepting the inevitable. But Lyril had made him visible again. She had looked at him and seen something other than a piece of meat for the arena. He shifted, testing the chains. The cold metal bit into his wrists. His muscles screamed in protest. This was his reality. This cage, this pain, this waiting game for a violent end. Lyril was an anomaly, a strange, beautiful impossibility that had briefly flickered into his darkness. He shouldn't dwell on it. He shouldn't hope. Hope was another dangerous thing here. But the image of her light, swirling and vibrant, was burned into his mind's eye. He couldn't unsee it. He couldn't unfeel the strange resonance of her presence. Hours seemed to pass in the oppressive silence. He tried to sleep, but his mind was too active, replaying every word, every nuance of Lyril's visit. He wondered if she would come back. He told himself it was foolish to expect it. It was probably a one-time thing, a moment of aberrant curiosity on her part. She was probably some low-level administrator, or even a higher-ranking prisoner herself, forced into some kind of service role by the Kthar. He knew almost nothing about the Kthar's social structure or the species they subjugated. Ignorance was a shield, albeit a thin one. Just as his body finally began to succumb to exhaustion, drifting towards a fitful sleep, he felt it, a subtle vibration through the floor, different from the heavy tread of the Kthar, lighter, faster. And then the familiar, low thrumming began, faint at first, then growing stronger. His eyes snapped open. The dim light in the corridor shifted, and a familiar figure appeared. Lyril. She moved with the same silent grace as before, her form shimmering in the poor light. She stopped outside his cell, her gaze fixed on him. The patterns on her body were different this time. A deep, steady indigo, punctuated by slow, pulsing waves of soft green. It felt calming, like deep water under moonlight. The thrumming was gentle, a soothing hum. "Kalen," she said, her voice the same low melody, the thrumming a part of it. "You did not speak of me." It wasn't a question. It was an observation, perhaps a test. He shook his head, his throat tight. There was no one to speak to. She seemed to consider this, her multifaceted eyes studying him intently. The green pulses on her body grew slightly brighter. "Good," she said simply. "Speaking of the unseen path can lead to its closure." She paused, then took another step closer, her hand reaching out again, stopping inches from the bars. They come for you soon. Kaylin's stomach dropped. The arena? She nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. The indigo deepened, a ripple of something akin to sadness or regret passing through her patterns. Yes, the morning trials. You are scheduled to face a challenging opponent. A challenging opponent. Understatement of the cycle. He was a human, relatively weak by galactic standards, especially against the array of genetically engineered beasts and hardened gladiators the Cathar pitted against their prisoners. He was meat. Do you enjoy watching? He asked, the bitterness sharp in his voice. He regretted at the moment the words left his mouth. Lyra recoiled slightly as if struck. The indigo patterns flared with a sudden, sharp red, quickly suppressed. Her voice, when she spoke, was cool, distant. My role is complicated. I do not enjoy the Cathar practices. She paused, her gaze intense again. I came to offer guidance. Guidance? From a being who spoke in metaphors and pulsed with light? He wanted to scoff, but the look in her eyes stopped him. There was a sincerity there, a depth of purpose that felt utterly genuine. What kind of guidance? He asked, his voice low. Your species relies too much on brute force, she said, the red fading from her patterns, leaving only the deep indigo and the gentle green pulses. You are strong, yes, but you lack adaptability, understanding of the deeper currents. He frowned. Deeper currents? What are you talking about? The flow of energy, she explained, her voice softer again. The vibration of intent. Every being, every action has a frequency. In the arena, these frequencies clash, creating dissonance. The Cathar thrive on this chaos. But you can learn to move with the currents, to anticipate the dissonance, to turn it to your advantage. It sounded like utter nonsense. Flow of energy? Vibration of intent? He was a pilot, not a mystic. His world was one of Newtonian physics, engine specs, and targeting protocols. How was any of that supposed to help him survive a creature designed solely to kill? I don't understand, he admitted, feeling hopelessly out of his depth. Lyra sighed, a soft sound that was part air, part thrumming. She brought her hand even closer to the bars, the patterns on it pulsing rapidly. You see the light, she said, her voice urgent. You see the colors of emotion and thought. This is not common for your kind. It is a gift, or perhaps a resonance with something ancient within you. He stared at her hand, at the hypnotic dance of colors. Was she saying he could use this ability to see the patterns? How? Focus on the patterns, she instructed, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. In the arena, your opponent's intent will be visible. Their fear, their rage, their attacks will manifest as ripples in their light. Do not focus on their physical form. Focus on the patterns. Anticipate the shift before the strike. It still sounded impossible, like something out of a dream. Anticipate a physical attack by looking at someone's mood ring, yet the intensity in her eyes, the unwavering conviction in her voice, made him hesitate to dismiss it entirely. What did he have to lose? Death was already waiting. It's that simple? He asked skeptically. Simple? No, she said, a hint of amusement returning to her voice, bringing back the soft green pulses. It requires focus, trust. Trust in what you see, what you feel, even if it defies your understanding. Your human minds are too rigid, too bound by the physical. Open yourself to the vibration. She paused, her gaze scanning him, lingering on his face. And be ready for disruption. The arena is designed to break all bonds, even the most ephemeral. Disruption. He didn't have any bonds left to break, or so he thought. But standing there, looking at Lyra, feeling that strange pull towards her, he realized maybe he did. This fragile, inexplicable connection they were forging in the darkness of his cell. Why are you doing this? He asked, the question burning on his tongue. Her patterns shifted, a complex swirl of colors he couldn't decipher, hinting at layers of meaning. Because, she said finally, her voice low and raw, I see a sky that deserves to weep its rain. Before he could ask what that meant, or thank her, or ask her to stay, the sound of boots returned, closer this time, louder. Lyra tensed, the angular red returning to her patterns, sharper than before. They are coming, she hissed. Remember what I said. Focus on the light. And she was gone again, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. The thrumming faded, leaving him alone once more. But this time, he wasn't just waiting for death. He was waiting with a strange, improbable hope and a bewildering new way of seeing the world, or at least the imminent threat of it. Focus on the light. He closed his eyes, tried to recall the dance of colors, the gentle thrumming, Liryl's intense gaze. Could he really do this? Could he see the enemy's intent before they struck? It seemed like a desperate gamble, a foolish notion, but it was the only thing he had. The heavy cell door grated open. 2 hulking Thar guards entered, their rough hides the color of dry blood, their armor scarred and dull. They didn't speak, didn't look him in the eye. One unchained him. The other grabbed his arm in an iron grip, pulling him roughly out of the cell. The cold metal of the chains was replaced by the cold stone of the corridor floor beneath his bare feet. He stumbled, weak from malnutrition and disuse. The guards dragged him along, ignoring his struggles, his body just another object to be moved. As they marched him down the long, echoing corridors toward the arena, Kalen tried to follow Liryl's instructions. He looked at the guards, trying to see their light, their patterns. All he saw was dull, uniform gray and red, like dried blood. It felt opaque, just as Liryl had said about his own species. Was it his own inability to see their intent? Or were they truly as simple and brutal as they appeared, their internal landscape a monochrome wasteland? They reached the arena entrance, a massive, reinforced gate. The roar of the crowd on the other side was a physical force, vibrating through the stone, making his teeth ache. He could hear the frantic beat of alien drums, the guttural chants of the Thar. The smell of blood, sweat, and something acrid and foreign filled the air. This was it, his end. The gate began to open, revealing a blindingly bright expanse of sand and dust, surrounded by tiers of roaring spectators. His captors shoved him forward. He stumbled into the light, squinting, his body trembling. The gate slammed shut behind him. He was alone in the center of the arena. The roar of the crowd intensified, a deafening wave of sound. He slowly straightened, trying to orient himself. The sand was stained dark in places. The air was thick with the metallic, sweet smell he now associated with Liryl, but stronger here, mingled with the stench of violence. Across the arena, a much larger gate began to rise. Anticipation rippled through the crowd. Kalen forced himself to breathe, trying to calm his racing heart. Remember the light. Focus on the light. The gate opened fully, and his opponent emerged. It was massive, covered in thick, segmented plates of natural armor, multiple limbs ending in wicked claws and a wide, fanged maw. It moved with a heavy, deliberate gait, its body low to the ground, radiating an aura of sheer, unadulterated aggression. The crowd roared its approval. Kalen stared at it, feeling a primal wave of terror wash over him. How could he possibly fight that? It was a living tank. Then he remembered Liryl's words. Don't focus on the physical form. Focus on the patterns. He forced his gaze upwards, past the armor plates and the claws. Try to see something else. The air around the creature seemed to shimmer. No, not shimmer. It was pulsing. A deep, angry red, shot through with violent, jagged flashes of black. It was a storm of rage and hunger, radiating outwards like heat from a fire. That was the light. That was the vibration. It wasn't on its skin as it was with Liryl, but around it, an aura of raw, hostile energy. He held his breath, focusing on the red and black storm. The creature began to charge, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. Kalen watched the patterns. The jagged black flashes intensified around its limbs, particularly the front two. It was about to strike. He didn't think. He reacted, throwing himself to the side, rolling clumsily in the dust. The creature's massive claws slammed into the sand where he had been moments before, kicking up a cloud of grit. The crowd roared, a mix of excitement and frustration. Kalen scrambled back to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs. It worked. The patterns had shown him the attack before it happened. He hadn't seen how it would attack, only that it would, and where the energy was concentrating. It was a crude form of precognition, based on reading intent. The creature turned, its multifaceted eyes locking onto him again. The red and black aura flared. It lowered its head, revealing a thick, armored skull. The black flashes concentrated around its head and upper body. It was going to charge head first. He feinted right, drawing its charge slightly, then darted left at the last second. The creature thundered past him, crashing into the arena wall with a sickening crunch of stone. The crowd groaned. Kalen didn't waste the opportunity. He might not be strong enough to hurt it, but he could be fast. He needed a weapon. His eyes scanned the arena floor, littered with debris from previous fights, shattered weapons, broken armor fragments. He spotted something glinting in the dust near the wall, a piece of sharpened metal, perhaps from a broken spear. He sprinted towards it, keeping one eye on the creature, whose red and black aura was now pulsing with renewed, frustrated fury. As he reached the metal shard, he risked a glance toward the stands. He didn't know why. Maybe he was hoping against hope. His eyes scanned the alien faces, the bizarre forms of the Kthar and the other subjugated species forced to watch. And then he saw her, high up in one of the viewing boxes, set slightly apart from the others. Lyral, her form was distinct. Even from this distance, the shimmering cloth, the graceful posture. He couldn't see her light from here, but he felt her presence, a strange resonance across the arena. She was watching him. The creature recovered from its charge and turned, its aura blazing crimson. It was enraged now. It wouldn't make the same mistake. This time, the black flashes were everywhere, radiating from its entire body. It wasn't a specific attack. It was an all-out assault. Kalen snatched up the metal shard. It was about the length of his forearm, sharp on one end, jagged on the other. Not much, but better than nothing. He backed away from the wall, keeping the creature in his sights. Its aura pulsed closer, closer. He remembered Lyral's words. Be ready for disruption. What did that mean? He dodged, weaved, and rolled, using the patterns as his guide. The red and black storm around the creature was a chaotic ballet of death. But by focusing on the flashes, he could anticipate the direction of its swings, the force of its charges. He wasn't fighting it head-on. He was dancing around its fury, letting its own momentum carry it past him. The crowd's roars turned confused murmurs, then frustrated shouts. They expected a quick kill, a brutal spectacle. Not this strange, evasive dance. The creature, too, seemed bewildered by his refusal to stand and fight. Its aura was starting to flicker with something new. Confusion, a hint of uncertainty mixed with the rage. This was it, the deeper currents, the flow of energy. He wasn't stronger, he wasn't faster, but he was reading the vibration of intent. He was turning its own energy against it, making it waste its strength. He needed to find a weakness, an opening. He kept moving, the sharp metal shard clutched in his hand. The creature lunged again, a wide, sweeping attack with its lower limbs. The black flashes concentrated there. He leapt over the attack, landing behind it. The red and black aura flared violently around its midsection as it twisted awkwardly. A sudden, intense concentration of black appeared along a seam in its armor, plating near its flank. A weak point, a momentary vulnerability exposed by its movement. This was his chance. He lunged forward, ignoring the scream of his own protesting muscles, ignoring the sheer terror that still gnawed at him. He gripped the metal shard with both hands and plunged it with all his might into the black flashing seam. There was a horrific shriek, not from the crowd, but from the creature itself. The red and black aura around it exploded outwards, a wave of chaotic energy that threw Kalen back, slamming him into sand. He landed hard. The wind knocked out of him. The metal shard ripped from his grasp. He looked up, gasping for air. The creature was thrashing violently, its massive body convulsing. The red and black aura was collapsing, flickering like a dying flame, replaced by a sickening green-yellow pallor, punctuated by spasms of dark purple. Pain, agony. He was seeing its death throes in color. It collapsed onto the sand with a ground-shaking thud. Silence descended over the arena, broken only by the creature's ragged, dying gasps. The crowd was stunned into silence. They had never seen anything like it. A scrawny human, armed with a piece of scrap metal, had defeated their champion beast. not through strength, but through something they didn't understand. Kalen pushed himself onto his hands and knees, coughing dust. His entire body ached. He looked up at the viewing boxes again. Lyra was still there. He couldn't see her face clearly, but he saw a subtle shift in her posture, a slight inclination of her head that felt like recognition, or perhaps something more. Her light wasn't visible at this distance, but he felt a surge of something that felt like triumph, mixed with deep concern. The Kthar guards rushed into the arena, their faces a mass of confusion and anger. They surrounded the fallen creature, prodding it with their weapons, confirming its death. Then they turned their attention to him. He was supposed to be dead. His survival disrupted their ritual, their carefully constructed spectacle. One of the guards approached him cautiously, his hand on his stun baton. Kalen remained on his knees, watching their movements, their opaque gray-red auras radiating simple, brutal intent. Subdue the anomaly. He was ready for them. Not to fight. He was too weak and unarmed. But he was ready to watch, to read the patterns, to anticipate. He had survived one impossible fight. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive the aftermath too. The silent stadium, the dead beast, the confused, angry guards, and the alien woman watching from above. His story in this place wasn't over. It had just taken a turn he never could predicted. He felt a sharp jab in his side, and pain flared. The guard had prodded him with the baton. He didn't cry out, just flinched. Another guard grabbed his arm, hauling him to his feet, roughly. They weren't killing him here, not yet. He was an anomaly, and the Kthar valued predictability above all else. His survival was a problem they needed to understand. As they dragged him back toward the arena entrance, through the now murmuring, confused crowd of guards and attendants, Kalen kept his gaze fixed on Lyra's viewing box. He needed to know she was still there, that this wasn't just a fever dream. She was. He saw her shift slightly, her hand lifting in a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture he couldn't interpret. Was it a signal? A farewell? Back in the cold, sterile corridors, the guards were rougher than before. They were clearly unsettled by what had happened. They didn't take him back to his cell. Instead, they dragged him towards a different section of the complex, one he hadn't seen before. The air grew colder, the metal walls thicker. They reached a reinforced door, significantly more secure than his previous cell door. A guard inputted a code, and a heavy door hissed open, revealing a small, Spartan room. Not a cell exactly, but not freedom either. A single cot, a sanitary unit, and nothing else. It felt less like a cage and more like an observation chamber. They pushed him inside, not bothering to chain him this time. The implied threat was enough. Where could he possibly go? The door hissed shut behind him, sealing him in silence and cold. He was alone again, but the silence was different. It wasn't the silence of waiting for death. It was the silence of being assessed, analyzed. He was no longer just fodder. He was a variable. He sank onto the cot, exhaustion washing over him. Every muscle screamed. Every breath was a small pain. But beneath the physical agony, a different feeling pulsed. Not hope, exactly. That was still too dangerous. But a flicker of possibility. He had survived, and he had done it by seeing the light, by trusting Lyra's impossible guidance. He closed his eyes, trying to conjure the image of her light. The deep indigo, the gentle green pulses, the sharp, angular red of danger, and the bewildering complexity he had seen when she spoke of her complicated role. Who was she? What was her connection to this place? Why had she helped him? The door hissed open again. Kalen's eyes snapped open. He tensed, expecting guards, interrogation. But it was Lyra. She slipped inside quickly, the door sealing shut behind her with a soft click. She was closer now, and he could see her patterns clearly in the dim light of the room. They were a swirling mix of anxiety, sharp yellow flashes, and something that felt like profound relief, soft, pulsing blue. The thrumming was rapid, almost frantic. "You did it!" she breathed, her voice barely audible, filled with emotion he couldn't quite name. "You saw. You fought the current and won." Kalen pushed himself up on the cot. "The patterns," he said, his voice hoarse. "It worked. I saw the energy, their intent." She nodded, stepping closer. She reached out, tentatively, her hand hovering near his face. "It is the oldest language," she murmured. "Before words, before forms, there was only vibration, intent made manifest." Her pattern shifted to a deep, steady green, radiating calm and something that felt like pride. He looked at her, really looked at her, without the bars separating them. Her form was undeniably alien, graceful and slender, but the emotional landscape expressed through her light felt strangely familiar. He saw fear, relief, curiosity, something akin to wonder. He saw himself reflected, twisted and distorted by the alien lens, but still recognizably human in his confusion and exhaustion. "Who are you, Lyral?" he asked again, the question more urgent now. "Why did you help me?" She lowered her hand, her pattern swirling again, a complex mix he couldn't fully read. "My species, we are bound to this place," she said, choosing her words carefully. "Bound by an ancient promise, twisted into servitude by the Kthar. We are the keepers of the light, the readers of the currents. But our power has been diminished, our purpose perverted." She paused, her gaze intense. "The Kthar see only the physical. They do not understand the deeper reality. They use us, but they fear what they do not understand." She stepped closer still, the space between them shrinking. He could feel the subtle vibration radiating from her, a gentle pressure that was both foreign and strangely comforting. "They brought you here a human," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your species is a paradox. Physically weak, yet with a strange, untapped potential. And you see the light. You feel the currents. It is a spark I have not seen in centuries, not since the time before the binding." Before the binding? Ancient promises? This was more than he could process. But her closeness, the intensity of her presence, grounded him in the immediate reality. He was alive because of her, and she seemed to believe he was important. Somehow. "What happens now?" he asked. "They won't kill me, but they won't let me go." "You are a problem for them now," she said, confirming his thoughts. "An anomaly in their predictable cruelty. They will study you, analyze you, try to understand how you did what you did." Her patterns showed a flicker of fear again, the sharp yellow. "They must not know I spoke to you, that I guided you. It would complicate things immeasurably for both of us." "I didn't tell them," he said. "I won't." A slow, deep blue pulsed through her patterns, like a sigh of relief. "I know," she said softly. "I felt the truth of your words when you spoke them." She reached out again, this time touching his arm tentatively, her delicate fingers cool against his skin. The patterns on her hand pulsed with soft blue and green, a soothing combination. The touch sent a jolt through him, a combination of surprise and something else, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. It was a simple touch, a gesture of gratitude or perhaps something more, but in this brutal place, it felt profoundly intimate. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up at her face. Her gaze was steady, intense. The blue and green pulsed gently, radiating trust, connection. The thrumming intensified slightly, a gentle hum that resonated deep within him. He felt an almost overwhelming urge to reach out and touch her in return, to feel the texture of her skin, to trace the flowing patterns with his own hand. But he hesitated. She was alien, bound by strange customs and ancient laws. And he was a prisoner, barely clinging to life. "Thank you, Lyral," he said, the words inadequate but necessary. "You saved my life." "Your life was saved by your own resonance," she corrected gently. "I only showed you how to hear the song that was already within you." She smiled then, a subtle shift in the lines around her eyes, a flicker of light deep within the multifaceted lenses. It wasn't a human smile, but the meaning was clear. Connection, shared understanding. She didn't move her hand. The touch lingered, a silent question, an unspoken bond forming between them in the sterile, oppressive room. The scent of blood and nectar, her scent, filled the small space. He was acutely aware of her presence, of the warmth radiating from her body, of the subtle vibration that hummed between them. His heart, which had been pounding with adrenaline from the fight, now beat with a different rhythm, slower, deeper. It was a rhythm of anticipation, of curiosity, of something new and terrifying and beautiful unfolding in the heart of his captivity. He lifted his hand slowly, tentatively, and reached out toward her. His fingers brushed against the back of her hand, the skin cool and smooth, unlike anything he'd ever touched. The patterns on her hand flared with a sudden, bright green, a flash of surprise, or perhaps something else. Her thrumming intensified, a rapid beat that mirrored the sudden acceleration of his own heart. He traced the edge of one of the flowing indigo patterns with his fingertip. It felt like silk, but vibrated with a subtle energy. Lyra didn't pull away. Her grip on his arm tightened almost imperceptibly. Her gaze remained locked on his, intense and probing. The blue and green in her patterns deepened, swirling together in a mesmerizing dance. He felt a wave of emotion radiating from her, curiosity, wonder, perhaps even a hint of trepidation. This physical contact, this shared vulnerability, felt like a crossing of boundaries, a step into unknown territory for both of them. "Your touch, it is unexpected," she murmured, her voice a low, melodic sound accompanied by the rapid thrum. Like the meeting of two disparate frequencies that somehow harmonize. He hadn't expected it either. The simple act of touching her felt profound, significant. It was a connection that went beyond words, beyond the vast gulf between their species and cultures. It was pure sensation, pure emotion, expressed through touch in the silent language of her light. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "Neither do I," she responded, her patterns shifting to a complex blend of blue, green, and a soft, warm gold. It felt like vulnerability, curiosity, and a hesitant desire. This is uncharted current. She leaned closer, her gaze dropping to his lips, then back to his eyes. The thrumming grew more intense, a palpable energy filling the air between them. Her scent, that strange mix of metallic sweetness, grew stronger, intoxicating. He felt a powerful pull towards her, an instinctual drive that bypassed logic and reason. It was a deep, primal yearning for connection, amplified by the shared danger and impossible intimacy of the situation. He saw the shift in her patterns, the subtle tensing of her form, the slight parting of her lips. It was an invitation, silent but clear, and he wanted nothing more than to accept it. He leaned in, slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. She didn't. Their breaths mingled, carrying the scent of human and alien, a heady, intoxicating blend. His eyes flickered to hers, seeing the dark, multifaceted lenses reflecting the dim light of the room and the intense, swirling colors of her light. His lips met hers. It was a hesitant touch at first, exploring the alien landscape of her mouth. Her lips were soft, yielding, unlike anything he had imagined. The thrumming reached a crescendo, vibrating through him, a powerful, resonant chord that seemed to vibrate through his very soul. Her patterns exploded in a riot of color, vibrant greens, deep blues, streaks of gold and silver, a visual symphony of sensation and emotion. It was overwhelming, intoxicating. She deepened the kiss, her arms circling his neck, pulling him closer, her body pressed against his, slender and warm, the shimmering cloth feeling like liquid fire against his skin. He responded instantly, his own arms wrapping around her, pulling her onto the cot with him. Their kiss grew more urgent, more passionate. It wasn't just a physical act. It was a merging of energies, a communion of souls expressed through touch and sensation. He tasted the strange, sweet nectar of her mouth, felt the rapid pulse of her body against his, saw the breathtaking dance of her light right before his eyes. Every sensation was heightened, amplified. He felt completely exposed, completely vulnerable and utterly consumed. The thrumming was constant now, a powerful, resonant vibration that seemed to penetrate every cell in his body. It was like being immersed in a bath of pure energy, cleansing and exhilarating. He could feel the emotion swirling around them, hers and his own, made visible in the vibrant colors of her light. Desire, fear, wonder, desperation, relief. They were all there, interwoven in a breathtaking tapestry. She broke the kiss, pulling back slightly, gasping softly. Her patterns were still a chaotic, beautiful storm of color, pulsing and swirling with raw emotion. Her multifaceted eyes, wide and dark, stared into his with an intensity that stole his breath. "This," she whispered, her voice ragged, the thrumming still strong. "This is beyond understanding." He couldn't speak, could only nod, his own chest heaving. His body felt like it was vibrating, resonating with her energy. He had never felt anything like it, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. It felt like a fundamental shift in his being. She leaned her forehead against his, her patterns calming slightly, settling into deep blues and soft golds, a reflection of peace and profound intimacy. "They will not understand this," she murmured. "The car, they will see only the physical, the profane. They cannot comprehend the joining of light." "Then we don't let them see," he said, his voice low and fierce. He pulled her closer again, burying his face in the soft, cool fabric of her clothes, inhaling her unique scent. "This room is shielded," she said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "One of the few places they do not watch continuously. But we must be discreet. For now." For now. The words held a fragile promise. A promise of more time, more connection, more of this bewildering, breathtaking intimacy. He didn't know what the future held, or how they could possibly navigate the dangers that surrounded them. But for this moment, in this small, shielded room, he wasn't just a prisoner waiting to die. He was Kalen, holding Lyral, a human, and an alien bound together by something deeper and more powerful than chains or fear. Their shared secret, their impossible connection, was a fragile light in the overwhelming darkness of his captivity. They remained like that for a long moment, simply holding each other, the thrumming a gentle song filling the small space, the patterns on Lyral's body a silent, beautiful declaration of their intertwined emotions. He felt a sense of peace settle over him, a calm that had been absent for months. It wasn't just a physical release. It was the emotional connection, the feeling of being truly seen and accepted by another being, regardless of species or circumstance. Lyral stirred, pulling back slightly, though she didn't release him. Her patterns had settled into a tranquil blend of deep blues and soft violets, a picture of contentment and lingering intimacy. The thrumming had softened to a gentle hum. "The morning trials are adjourned," she said, her voice quiet. "Your survival has caused a disruption in their schedule. They must make a new plan." "So I have time?" he asked. She nodded, a little, enough to understand each other better. Her gaze met his, and in the depths of her multifaceted eyes, he saw not just curiosity, but a deep yearning, a hunger for connection that mirrored his own. "What is the light?" he asked, needing to understand more about this strange world she inhabited, this language she spoke. She smiled softly, a subtle shift in her features that sent a ripple of warmth through him. "It is a visible manifestation of the life force," she explained, "the energy that flows through all sentient beings. For my people, the Cylani, it is our primary form of communication, our culture, our history. It is woven into the very fabric of our existence. The Kthar, they see only shadows where we see suns." Cylani. Lyral was a Cylani, the keepers of the light, bound to the Kthar by an ancient promise. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture that was both fascinating and deeply troubling. "And I can see it?" he asked, still struggling to comprehend it. "Not as fully as a born Cylani," she said, her patterns shifting with a hint of thoughtful green. "But you see the echoes, the reflections, enough to understand intent, to feel emotion. It is a rare gift for your kind, Kalen, one that makes you significant." Significant? He had been significant only as fodder, as a means to an end. The idea that he might have some intrinsic value, some purpose beyond survival, was almost overwhelming. "What was the binding?" he asked, the words feeling heavy with unspoken history and pain. Lyral's pattern shifted again, a ripple of dark indigo and sharp red, quickly subdued. "It is a story for another time," she said, her voice growing distant. "A story of betrayal, of sacrifice, of a promise twisted into a chain." She paused, her gaze clouded. "We were meant to be guardians, Kalen, keepers of balance. Instead, we are slaves to a brutal power." The pain in her voice resonated with his own. He understood betrayal, loss, the feeling of being trapped by forces beyond your control. He tightened his arms around her instinctively, pulling her close again. She leaned into him, burying her face against his chest, the thrumming a soft, mournful sound. They stayed like that for a long time, two lost souls finding solace in each other's presence, in the silent language of touch and the whispered secrets of the light. The sterile room felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. Outside, the Cathar planned their next move, their brutal power a constant threat. But in here, they had this fragile, impossible connection. He didn't know how long they had. Hours? Days? Time was fluid in this place. But every moment with Lyral felt precious, stolen from the jaws of oblivion. They talked, sharing fragments of their lives, their fears, their dreams. She told him about the beauty of her homeworld, a place of vibrant colors and resonant energy, a stark contrast to the gray, brutal reality of the Cathar domain. He told her about Earth, about the stars he used to navigate as a pilot, about the quiet life he had lost. Their intimacy deepened with each passing moment, not just physical, but emotional. They learned to read each other, not just through Lyral's light, but through subtle gestures, shared glances, the unspoken language of two beings who had found each other in the darkest of places. He found himself falling for her, not just the alien beauty and the mesmerizing patterns, but the being beneath, the brave, wounded soul who carried the burden of her species' history. One cycle. Lyral arrived with a different energy about her. Her patterns were sharp, agitated, streaks of red and yellow cutting through the deep blues. The thrumming was a frantic vibration that filled the small room with a sense of urgency. "They are planning," she said, her voice tight. "A new trial. Not in the arena. A different kind of test." Kalen sat up, his heart pounding. "What kind?" "They suspect," she said, her gaze scanning the room as if expecting spies. "They saw you survive the beast. They do not understand how. They believe there is something unnatural about you, something they need to isolate and study." "You mean they suspect you?" he asked, his blood running cold. Her patterns flared with sharp red. "They do not have proof," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "But the Cylani who serve them, we are watched. Always. My connection to you, it is not invisible to all." "Who else can see the light?" he asked. "The elders," she said, her voice lowering. "Those who have not forgotten the old ways. And the masters. The masters, the Cathar rulers, or someone else." The hierarchy of his alien empire was still a mystery to him. "What is the test?" he pressed. "A test of your resistance," she said, choosing her words carefully. "They will expose you to energies that should unravel you, break your connection to the light, make you predictable again." Her pattern shifted to a deep, fearful indigo, edged with jagged black. "It will be painful, Kalen, and dangerous. It could sever your connection to your own life force." His stomach clenched. Sever his connection to his own life force? It sounded like a slow, agonizing death. "They must not succeed," Lyral said, her voice fierce. "Not just for you. For us. Your ability to see the light is a threat to their control. If you can resist their attempts to extinguish it, it is proof that their power is not absolute. It is a spark of hope for my people." "How do I resist?" he asked, feeling a surge of determination mixed with terror. "You must ground yourself," she said, reaching out and taking his hands in hers. Her patterns flowed into his touch, a powerful wave of reassurance and strength. "You must find your own core vibration, the song of your own soul, and hold on to it. Let the incoming energy flow through you, but do not let it extinguish your own flame." It sounded like Cylani mysticism, but he understood the core concept. He needed to find his inner strength, his identity, and cling to it against the external force trying to break him. "I don't know what my core vibration is," he admitted, feeling lost. "You do," she said, her gaze intense, unwavering. "It is the storm, the unwept rain. It is your resilience, your defiance, your connection to the world you lost, and the connection you have found here." Her patterns deepened, a swirling mix of blue, green, and gold that felt like deep emotion, like love. Her words resonated deep within him. The storm, the unwept rain. It was the grief, the anger, the loss that had been trapped inside him for so long. But it was also his strength, his refusal to give up, his ability to find a flicker of beauty and connection even in this hellish place. "Hold on to me," she whispered, her patterns vibrating with intensity. "When energy comes, focus on my light. Let it be your anchor, your harbor in the storm." He squeezed her hands, looking into her eyes. "I will." They didn't know when the test would come. The waiting was the hardest part. They spent the time together, their bond deepening with every shared glance, every whispered word, every touch. Their intimacy was a silent defiance against the brutal reality of their captivity. They explored each other with a hunger born of desperation and deep connection, their bodies and souls intertwined in a small, shielded room. It wasn't just physical release. It was a merging of worlds, a profound act of trust and vulnerability. He learned to read her patterns, not just emotional shifts, but the subtle vibrations that communicated deeper meanings, unspoken thoughts. And she learned to read the landscape of his human emotions, the quiet pain and fierce loyalty that lay beneath his sarcastic exterior. When the door finally hissed open again, it wasn't Lyral. It was two Kthar guards, accompanied by a smaller, robed figure whose face was hidden by a hood. This figure didn't wear armor, but radiated an aura of cold, sterile authority. Their light was a dull, metallic gray, utterly devoid of color or warmth. It felt like emptiness, like a void. One of the masters? They didn't speak. The robed figure simply gestured towards Kalen. The guard stepped forward, grabbing his arms. He didn't resist. He locked eyes with the robed figure, trying to read its intent, its patterns. All he saw was that cold, gray void. There was nothing to read. It was unnerving, terrifying. As the guards pulled him out of the room, he risked a glance back. Lyral wasn't there. He felt a pang of fear, a sense of being utterly alone again. But then, just as the door began to close, he saw a flicker of color in the shadows just outside the room. A brief flash of deep blue and soft gold. She was there, watching, his anchor. They took him to a different chamber, circular and sterile. The walls made of smooth black material that seemed to absorb light. In the center of the room was a single, raised platform. They pushed him onto it. The robed figure stood off to the side, observing silently. The guards withdrew to the entrance, their gray-red auras radiating a sense of anticipation. He was alone on the platform. The air in the chamber felt thick, heavy. He tried to find his core vibration, to anchor himself. He thought of Earth, of the stars, of the feeling of the controls in his hands. He thought of Lyral, of her voice, her touch, the vibrant dance of her light. He focused on the image of her deep blue and soft gold patterns, trying to conjure their warmth and steadiness. Then, the chamber walls began to hum, a low frequency at first, then rising in pitch, growing in intensity. He felt a strange pressure on his skin, a tingling sensation that quickly escalated to a burning ache. The air shimmered, distorting his vision. He saw swirling colors appear in the air around him, not like Lyral's patterns, but chaotic, dissonant colors, harsh reds, sickly greens, jarring yellows. The Kthar were projecting their energy at him, attempting to disrupt his own. The pain intensified, spreading through his body, making his teeth ache, his vision blur. He felt his thoughts scattering, his hold on reality slipping. This was what Lyral had warned him about, the attempt to unravel him. He focused harder, clinging to the image of Lyral's light, deep blue and soft gold. His anchor. He felt her presence, a distant echo, a subtle vibration cutting through the painful dissonance. "Hold on to me." Her voice seemed to whisper in his mind. "Let it flow through you, but do not let it extinguish your own flame." He took a ragged breath, trying to follow her instructions. He didn't fight the energy directly. He tried to accommodate it, to let it pass through him, like water through a sieve, without being swept away. He focused on his own inner storm, the core of resilience and defiance Lyral had spoken of. He was the unwept rain. He would not be extinguished. The chaotic colors intensified, swirling faster, pressing in on him. The pain was excruciating. He gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. He could hear the low, guttural murmurs of the Kthar guards at the entrance, and the silent, sterile presence of the robed figure. They were watching, waiting for him to break. He wouldn't break. He saw Lyril's face in his mind's eye, her dark, multifaceted eyes filled with hope and vulnerability. He felt the phantom touch of her hand, the soft thrumming against his skin. He clung to that feeling, that connection, like a lifeline in a storm. The energy level in the chamber seemed to peak. The colors around him reached a frenzied crescendo, a jarring cacophony of light and vibration. He felt his body trembling, his mind screaming in protest. He was on the verge of breaking. And then, just as he thought he couldn't bear it any longer, he felt a surge of energy from within, not the chaotic, external energy, but something else. Something warm, vibrant, and intensely personal. His own light? He didn't see colors around himself, but he felt it. A core of calm within the storm, a steady, resonant frequency that pushed back against the dissonance. He focused on that feeling, on that inner core of light. He let the chaotic energy wash over him, through him, but it didn't extinguish his own flame. It was like standing firm against a hurricane, letting the wind and rain batter you, but refusing to be swept away. The humming of the walls began to lower, the chaotic colors in the air slowly fading. The pressure on his body eased. The pain receded, leaving behind a deep exhaustion, a bone weariness that settled deep in his muscles. He remained standing on the platform, trembling but unbroken. Silence returned to the chamber. The robed figure glided closer, its sterile gray aura a stark contrast to the vibrant energy he had just experienced. It stopped in front of him, its hidden face tilted as if assessing him. The guards murmured amongst themselves, their voices low and surprised. He had endured it. He had resisted. The anomaly remained an anomaly. The robed figure made a gesture, and the guards came forward, pulling him roughly from the platform. He stumbled, weak and drained. They led him out of the chamber, back down the silent corridors. He didn't know where they were taking him this time. Had he passed the test? Failed it? Did it even matter? He was still a prisoner. But he was a prisoner who had seen the light, who had felt the song, and who had found an anchor in the most unlikely of places. As they reached his previous room, the observation chamber, the door hissed open. He saw Lyril standing just inside, her patterns a turbulent mix of anxiety and relief. As he was pushed into the room, she rushed forward, her hands reaching for him, her patterns radiating intense concern. "Kalen!" she cried, her voice filled with emotion. She examined him frantically, her eyes scanning his face, his body. "Are you hurt? Did they extinguish it?" He shook his head, collapsing onto the cot. "No," he gasped, his voice raspy. "I held on. Your light, it was my anchor." A wave of profound relief washed over her, visible in the sudden bloom of deep blue and soft gold across her patterns. She sank onto the cot beside him, pulling him into her arms, holding him tightly. Her thrumming was a gentle, soothing vibration that calmed the frantic beating of his heart. "You are stronger than they know," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Stronger than even I knew." He buried his face against her shoulder, inhaling her scent, feeling the rise and fall of her chest. He was safe. For now, safe in her arms. The door remained open. The guards lingered in the doorway, watching them with silent, unreadable gazes. The robed figure was gone, but its sterile, gray aura seemed to linger in the air. The Kthar were observing, assessing, trying to understand the strange connection between the human anomaly and the Cylani who was supposed to serve them. Lyril pulled back slightly, her gaze meeting his. Her patterns were a beautiful blend of love, relief, and a hint of defiance. "This changes things," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You are not just a prisoner anymore, Kalen. You are a challenge to their understanding. And I cannot hide my connection to you any longer. Not fully." He knew she was right. Their secret was out, or at least suspected. The fragile sanctuary of their stolen moments was gone. But something else had taken its place. A sense of shared purpose, of facing the unknown together. "What do we do?" he asked. She smiled, a fierce, determined smile that made her light flare with bright, vibrant green. "We show them," she said. "We show them the power of the light. they cannot see. We show them that the song of the soul cannot be extinguished. Her words were a promise, a declaration of war against the sterile, brutal power of the Kthar. It was a terrifying prospect, but looking into her eyes, seeing the fire in her light, he felt a surge of hope he hadn't thought possible. He was ready. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The human who could see the light, and the Cylani who carried its full power. Their impossible love story, born in the heart of darkness, had just begun. He reached out and touched her face, his fingers tracing the edge of the flowing patterns. Her skin felt warm now, vibrating with energy. Her patterns responded to his touch, swirling into a breathtaking display of color, a kaleidoscope of blues, greens, golds, and violets, punctuated by flashes of pure white, a manifestation of joy, of connection, of a love that transcended species and circumstance. Together, he said, his voice firm. Together, she echoed, her multifaceted eyes holding his gaze, her thrumming a powerful, resonant harmony with the beat of his own heart. The Kthar guard in the doorway watched them, their opaque auras radiating confusion and suspicion. They saw only a human and a Cylani, touching. They saw only the physical. They could not see the vibrant, powerful light that burned between them, the impossible bond that was about to shatter their carefully controlled world. The future was uncertain, filled with danger and the unknown. But for the first time in a long time, Kalen wasn't just surviving. He was alive, and he was loved. The unwept rain had finally found its sky.